Here comes another important tip from the Personal Defense Network. I've got Craig Douglas from ShivWorks here with me on the Personal Defense Network today to talk about an important training and real-world consideration. What do we do with our trigger finger when we're not actually shooting?
Thanks, Rob. Historically, we've been taught that if we're not shooting or we're not on sites, there's some version of that we've all heard in gun safety where we need to keep that finger away from the trigger unless we're actually firing. Now, something we do more often than not with people is hold them at gunpoint. In fact, we probably do that more than we actually shoot people. So the last thing we want to do is have our finger in some kind of undefined position, because when you think of off, well, off could mean here, off could mean here, off could mean here, okay? And certainly as we're giving verbal commands, something I've seen and a friend of mine refers to as trigger checking, where people gradually move that finger to the trigger. So what we'd like to do is think about our trigger finger, instead of being off the trigger, how about we think about it and phrase it like this? Why don't we put our trigger finger on something that is definitely not the trigger? Now, in the case of this Glock auto pistol, that may be the disassembly lever, something I feel and know is not the trigger. Or that may mean hooking the ejection port and putting that finger here. But I want to touch something tangible that I know for a fact is not on the trigger. So instead of thinking of it as finger stays off the trigger, why don't we think about it as finger stays on something that's not the trigger until the decision to fire has been made. The last thing I want to do is inadvertently shoot somebody that I don't mean to shoot, or God forbid, say I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm trigger checking, I've heard a noise, and maybe shoot a loved one. So that's kind of my safety tip for the Personal Defensive Network.
That makes sense. You know, that's a great safety tip. And then the reality is that consistency, your finger being in the same place all the time, is going to make it more efficient and more consistent when you actually do go to shoot. We're much less likely to end up slapping the trigger, fumbling that movement from our trigger finger actually down onto the trigger. I think that's a great point. Really important that you integrate this into your training. Don't just have your finger off the trigger, have it on something consistently. Be sure to check out the Personal Defense Network for more important tips just like that one.